turn on the two lights by my bed upstairs. Beşte, 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 bravo. Thank you for the harvest manifestation. Arana, 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 Levana, arana, 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 bela bela, avana 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 prashta, avana bela bela, avana bela avana bela bela, 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 avana prashta, avana bela bela, avana prashta, avana bela bela, 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 avana bela bela. Ravana, Varana, Ravana, Arya, thank you for the harvest manifestation. Ravana, Varana, Ravana, Arya, Ravana, Varana, Ravana, Varana, Ravana, Varana, Ravana, Varana, Ravana, Varana, Ravana, Varana, Father, thank you for the Holy Spirit. Step by step, Ravana, 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 Varana, Ravana, 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 Good evening, class. We give God the glory for another opportunity to come to you um, through the live stream. Um, KWI class today, Monday, the 5th of June. And today we will continue our class in basic communication skills. So far, we have looked at homiletics, we have done hermeneutics, we have also done presentation skills, we've dealt with dialogue, and today we want to deal with the subject of tact and diplomacy. Tact and diplomacy. Tact is the art of making a point without making an enemy. The art of making a point without making an enemy. While diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have their way, have your way. Diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way. Now, when we combine the two definitions together, tact and diplomacy is the ability to assert your ideas or opinions, knowing what to say and how to say it without damaging the relationship by causing offense. Tact and diplomacy is the ability to assert your ideas or opinions, knowing what to say and how to say it without damaging the relationship by causing offense. Most times in the world in which we are in, many people get offended by what we say, even though we may not intend them harm. It happens at various levels of society and even in government in order to ensure the peaceful coexistence of nations. Every nation employs diplomats who have specialized and becomes professionals in the art of communication, in the art of making peace, in the act of building relationships between one nation and the other. And so usually they occupy the ministry of in America is the Secretary of State in charge of the diplomatic missions of America, the embassies, the consulates across the world. In the British system, we have the Ministry of External Affairs or Ministry of Foreign Affairs. All their role is to ensure that there is a peaceful coexistence between the nations. Many wars are actually resolved through the act of diplomacy. Excuse me. When diplomacy is employed, um, conflicts are resolved and nations can build agreements and establish relationships that foster the mutual benefits of these nations. And so tact and diplomacy is important in leadership so that your organization can exist peacefully with another. It's important, even as family heads, to know how to exercise tact and diplomacy as business leaders, as ministry leaders, because we need to establish peaceful coexistence with individuals and entities. And so tonight we are going to learn the ability to assert our ideas or opinions, knowing what to say and how to say it without damaging our relationships or causing offense. For those who are in the live class, you can turn your um, screen to the basics of tact and diplomacy. The basics of tact and diplomacy. The first thing that is important or has to be developed, there are 4 virtues that you have to develop um, in order to exhibit tact and diplomacy. The first is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. Now, people with higher emotional intelligence can usually use tact and diplomacy more naturally in communication. Emotional intelligence is a measure of how well we understand our own emotions and the emotions of others. The emotion is the aspect of us where we become sensitive, our feelings, all that we hear and see and touch and smell uh, are all, or taste, are all connected to our emotions. That is how we become sensitive to the world around us. Now, when we say one who has developed their emotional intelligence, it means that they have a control of how they react to what they see, what they hear, and what they taste, touch, or feel. Um, there are some people who cannot control their emotions. They react to almost every stimuli, whilst there are others who can sense a change in an atmosphere and yet not react. In other words, they are able to hide their emotions, hide their feelings, not quickly react to what people say or a different smell in the environment. They are able to maintain their composure. Now, when you are able to maintain your composure, then you can study those in the room, how they react to changes in the atmosphere, changes in what others say, changes in 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 the visuals in a room, how they react. Because you did not react, because you are in control of yours, you can study people and tell how they react each time there is a change in the atmosphere, change in what is said, change in what is seen or what is smelled. So it is important to develop emotional intelligence. That means master your senses whilst you pay attention to how others are reacting to changes. The second point is showing empathy. Showing empathy as an extension of emotional intelligence. Empathy is your ability to see the world from another person's perspective. Your ability to see the world from another person's perspective. So, empathy is to be able to notice, for instance, someone's change in mood every time something is said or something is done. And so to put yourself in their position, knowing how they will react in advance, and helping accommodate that change of mood, change of reaction accommodating their changes in the relationship, in how you relate to them. Assertiveness. That's the next point. The reason for using tact and diplomacy is very often to persuade or influence others to think or behave in a certain way. So assertiveness is fundamental to this process and a skill that many people lack. To be assertive is to be able to establish a point, to establish the reason, the sense in what you want them to know or believe or become a party to be able to establish a point with people, to be able to establish an understanding. That is assertiveness. Now, the fourth basics of tact and diplomacy is politeness. Politeness, being polite and courteous, respecting other people's viewpoints and cultural differences is important in many interpersonal relationships. To be polite is not to take offense at what other people say or do, to accommodate what they say, to accommodate who they are, to accommodate their differences in culture, to accommodate their different ways of doing things and not taking offense. So, politeness is to respect the viewpoints and the cultural differences of others in a relationship. So, these 4 points: emotional intelligence, how well you manage your reaction to changes, and showing empathy, that is to be able to see things from other people's perspective, to share in their own perspective and their own understanding. Assertiveness, to be able to establish a point and bring people to understand, to a certain level of understanding. And then politeness, that is to allow others to have their way even though they are different from ours. Now, based on this basis, we will move forward and look at strategies for tact and diplomacy. And the first point is how to introduce an idea. Introducing an idea. Sometimes the most appropriate action may be to withhold your opinion, or it may be possible to introduce an idea or forward or favored outcome in such a way that the other person can take ownership of it. This is to say that instead of straight away establishing a point that you have in mind, you rather want it to come from the lips of others, especially if you can smell the sense of superiority with those you are having a discussion with. It is always better to look for a way to present your opinion or introduce your idea in such a way that they will think they put forth the idea. When you're dealing with people with a superiority complex, they always want to be the source of the idea. They want to be in control of the agenda. It is their nature. Unfortunately, we have to build a relationship with them over a project. And the best way to do it is to lay the platform such that it will look as though they presented the idea. In other words, you steer the conversation in such a way that they end up being the ones who supposedly own the idea. In other situations, however, it may be best to take a direct stance, stating exactly what you want and how you intend to have it. So, um, if you cannot present an idea in such a way that your opponents or the other party will take ownership of it, then you can straight shoot, take a direct stance, stating exactly what you want and how you intend to achieve it, so that it's a clear agenda. This is what we want to discuss. You should first focus on knowing what you want to achieve. In other words, you have to have a meeting with yourself, a meeting with yourself where you are placing yourself in the position of the potential parties to the conversation. What do you want to achieve? Is it going to sound well in their ears? What is your favored outcome? You got to make notes of this. Write it down and think about your reasons why you want to pursue this objective. Try to take a step back from your personal opinions and think about the facts surrounding the situation. Think about the facts surrounding. The question is, what do I want to achieve with my students? How do I intend to impact society? How do I intend to help each individual change their their position or their level of insight into certain subjects? Now, these are points which I must resolve. I must not only take the position of I want to build a school and I want to just train people. I need to know all the reasons, all the reasons, all the motives, all the objectives, and all the outcomes that I intend for this school project. Next, the third strategy for tact and diplomacy is anticipating potential objections. Anticipating potential objections. Consider and write down what the objections might be from others. Now, you got to be able to think ahead of the objections that folk in the room, parties to this conversation, will pose. Somebody might say, aren't there enough schools in the community? Um, why do you want to build your own school? Okay, you must be ready for such a question, especially if you want them to participate and to support your idea. So you got to think of all the potential objections, right? Real estate is expensive, okay? How do you intend to deal with competition? How do you intend to finance? You need to look at all these potential concerns and then answers answers to these concerns. You got to demonstrate that you have considered the opinions and or arguments. Most of the time, if you are not ready psychologically and not prepared for such objections, one question from one of the parties can totally derail and demoralize you and show that you are unprepared. But if you have answers, if you have facts, if you have even data sheets to spread at every point a question is asked, an objection is raised, if you are prepared for all such objections with facts and reasonable answers and good arguments, you are going to have your 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 objectives and support for your ideas. The fourth strategy for tact and diplomacy is that your mood is critical. Your mood is critical. Do not enter into negotiations in an angry or stressed way. When you are angry and when you are already stressed and you enter into a meeting or a negotiation, it's easy for anyone to anger you or annoy you with a simple question, not even an offensive question, but a question that needs a simple answer. There are times when you can even laugh off a question, and everyone in the room starts to laugh because the question is not credible. So try to remain calm and keep an open mind. Keep an open mind. Find out the facts as well as what is and what is not possible before you react. In other words, keep calm in the meeting, and if there are any facts that you don't have, you can easily excuse that question and say, well, there are certain facts that you would have loved to present, but you don't have them now, but you're going to circulate them later. Now, that gives you the opportunity to look into certain concerns you were not ready for, and put together a more concerted answer, a more factual answer that you can circulate either by email to the participants later. So your mood is critical. Don't be on the edge, because if you are on the edge, then every little thing and every little opposition will annoy you. Strategies. Another strategy for tact and diplomacy is the essence of feedback. When communicating, listen to what the other person or people have to say. Watch for non-verbal communication, such as body language, their tone of voice, to help you understand what they're trying to say. Hold back your own opinions and ideas until you have had the chance to understand the other person's point of view, and then plan your responses carefully to fit with the feedback you are receiving. So it is important that you talk to their points, talk to the concerns of those with whom you are having a meeting. Talk to their points, talk to their concerns. Don't be rash to give an opinion or to react to someone's point of view without first thinking and planning a careful response, right? So work with the feedback so that the conversation becomes a kind of block building from one level to another. In certain meetings, you will find some of the participants may be quiet, but their quietness does not mean that they are not participating. They are trying to form an opinion. Your proposition might be an entirely strange idea to their ears. They've never thought about it. So they are listening to you in order to form an opinion. And so they are building a block. They are trying to construct what you are saying in their minds and looking at all the possibilities and all the loopholes so that they can formulate a clear understanding before they can express their own opinion. So it is important that you articulate what you are saying in such a way that you address every concern in the room. The next strategy is negotiate. If what you seek is in conflict with the other person's ideas, you may have to discuss how sacrifices can be made to provide a better result for both of you in the long run. So at the end of the day, if your ideas are conflicting, then there is a need to negotiate. To negotiate, find the bridge between the differences in ideas so that mutual sacrifice is usually seen more favorably than one-sided sacrifice. By building a bridge between the two ideas or different ideas in the room, everyone will have to make a sacrifice, because at the end of the day, you want to build an interface where every idea comes together. But at the point where every idea comes together, every party to each of the ideas presented must make some sacrifices. So you aim to reach a compromise which results in a win-win situation for everyone. So everyone will make sacrifices, there'll be a compromise, and it results in a win-win situation for everyone. The seventh strategy for tact and diplomacy is to turn statements into questions. Turn statements into questions. Rather than directly voicing your opinion, turn your statement into a question for the other person to think about it. Sometimes when you make statements building upon an idea, statement upon statement, you might easily lose some of the people in the room. But sometimes when you uh, approach your 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 statements by turning them into questions, you invoke dialogue. And once dialogue is invoked, the chances of participation and agreement is high. This not only leads some people to think along the same lines as you, but also makes room for discussion of what interests you and what may potentially benefit both parties. This is also particularly useful if you are not entirely sure what you are able to achieve or exactly what is needed to overcome a problem. So this strategy often allows more exploration of options, a more open approach than just stating an opinion. So when you have an opinion, sometimes it is better to turn it into a question so that there is a more pragmatic approach from all the participants the in the room. All the participants in the room. Down heated situations. Calm down heated situations. If the conversation gets heated, try to give yourself room to respond in ways that help rather than inflame a situation. If you can catch yourself at the moment your gut reaction wants to take over, take a breath and give yourself time. Tell the other person that you need to think about what they have just said rather than feel obliged to answer immediately. Now, if the conversation, take control of a situation rather than becoming out of control and risk saying or doing something you may later regret. Parties feeling comfortable with the outcome is an important part of showing tact and diplomacy. So, most importantly, don't get angry. Don't get agitated in a meeting. Think about what has been said, digest it, and take your time and plan a reasonable and acceptable answer. Try to hold the conversation in a very peaceful and cohesive atmosphere. Try and balance what one person says with another so that there will be no conflict. There will be no agitation by what one person has said or done. There are two scriptures that are very important, tact and diplomacy. I want to end with two good scriptures. First is in James chapter 1, verse 19, where the apostle James, wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear wrath. In other words, pay attention to what is speaking. In other words, plan what you say carefully and be slow to wrath. In other words, don't react to everything everyone says. Don't allow your mood to be affected by what people say. Now, in the scriptures in Proverbs chapter 25, verse 11, the scripture also says, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. When you are communicating, you must aim at painting pictures with your words so that at the end of the day, your listeners have a picture in their minds that is beautiful, a beautiful picture in their minds. So in tact and diplomacy, you are trying to build a picture that is not offensive to anyone in the room, a picture that everyone can appreciate, everyone can identify with. That is what you intend to do in tact and diplomacy. Planning your words, planning your statements, and if possible, turn statements into questions. Um, uh, uh, Build on people's opinions answer questions directly, and let everyone in the room have a sense of ownership of the idea, giving everyone an opportunity to own the idea and building bridges with conflicting ideas so that you can have an interface, a common ground where everyone has a stake in the pot, but at the same time sacrificing their bones, sacrificing all that is conflicting, so that we can all walk away with a pot of soup where everyone made a meaningful and significant contribution. So this ends our class in basic communication. Next week, we are going to have our last class for the year, and we will resume again in September. We'll resume again in September. But next week, I'll take us through most of the courses that we have done, so that we can look at our assignments. I'm going to put forth our assignments and put forth the calendar for the next school session. So next week, Monday, I expect every one of us to be in the class so that we can round up the year, know our assignments, and then we can take a break. God bless you for coming to the class this evening. Have a wonderful evening, and God bless you. Bye.